Yo, 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 what is up, everybody? Welcome to the True Fitness Podcast. I'm your host, Adrian Conway. And today I want to dive straight in and talk about the Mayhem Classic. There is a ton of exciting things to talk about. To squat or not to squat is another common topic within the CrossFit community. I made a post about some of the qualifiers for the age group online qualifiers and the lack of squatting that was present, and then how we can also show that that was akin in the WFP qualifier for their first round of qualification. There's a lot to dive in and a lot of different discussions to have, but I'm going to start by addressing the Mayhem Classic first. What an amazing way to start the season. I think there was no better way to do that than at the GOATS facility out there in Cookeville, Tennessee. They had a pretty amazing lineup of athletes that were there to compete. We watched, of course, men and women punch their tickets to the CrossFit Games, which of course was extremely exciting. And we saw Fisa Gaffi pretty much put on an entire clinic throughout the course of the weekend on the women's side, and Abby Domit. They both finished with a tie at 400 points, and then Fee gets the nod to get the first place because of higher placing scorings when it comes to going down the leaderboard. She had more higher placed scoring. Emily Rolfe, unfortunately, 5 points out from qualifying for the CrossFit Games, which has to be a huge letdown. So big shout out to you, Emily. I know that that's a tough place to be in regards to a psychology and something to rebound from this early in the season. It would have been an amazing thing to punch your ticket early, be able to play with house money the rest of the way that you navigate the year in regards to your training and recovery and being very picky on where you want to compete and how you want to compete. Now there's a little bit more pressure throughout the year. So thoughts with her and her camp. I know her and her husband do a great job at working together, and she was fit and then just couldn't execute the same way that Abby and Fee were able to. So congratulations to you two ladies. Now on the men's side, it was a lot of probably what most of us predicted would have been. I've kept my mouth shut and not really spent a lot of time even talking about predictions and gossip around the community, because of course I want this podcast to be more of a platform in regards to education for fitness, performance, and nutrition. And I would say that Hatfield and Mertens had to be two of the favorites when you're under the assumption of what the flavor of programming would be when it comes to a Mayhem Classic. And I say that because not that I think the programming was bad in any way, because I do not. I thought that it was very well rounded in regards to the test of fitness, the energy systems used, the variety of movements. And I think that it was fun, but it was very mayhem. It was very Rich Froning. And that means we were going to pass below parallel a lot and end up with weights over our head a lot. And I would give you my opinion and say that he's the fittest man in history because of his hips and his knees and his shoulders. And he's got a great physique and great amount of fitness, but it was always the quality of movement and the tolerance at which Rich could thrive, specifically after a long series of days, a lot of contractions, and into the final day when we were getting after traditional CrossFit, he could still lunge and squat and press better than the rest of us out there on the competition floor. So that's typically what you get. You're going to get GHDs in high volume. You're going to get a lot of squatting, and you're going to get a lot of hanging and pressing. And of course, that's CrossFit at its finest, but there's also a caveat to the considerations that we must make in the way I think that we need to influence the community and put an onus on their even training. So nonetheless, congratulations, man. Austin Hatfield took the #1 spot, and he absolutely demolished the field, in my opinion. I think that he put on a clinic. I think that Austin has the frame, and it seems like the genetic pedigree to really make some strong runs here in the future. And I'm being cautious with the words I use because I don't know what that will look like for Austin. I think we still have to see the way his mind and his spirit carry him in the heat of the competition at the CrossFit Games. We're getting top 10 to me this year, doing what he did, even in the open announcement, again, was seizing the moment there. And then now what he did head to head with the deep field, the way that it was deep here at the Mayhem Classic to kick off the season. We need to be watching him very closely. We need to be watching his aerobic development. We need to be watching how he runs and how he improves his running, the way that he can tap into his local muscle endurance, and the ways in which he can still continue to try to explore finding ways to set himself apart because of his frame. And I'm not just talking about his size. He's not the smallest of athletes. He's not as short as Colton, but he does have a great frame. And what I mean by that is, when we think about torso length, femur length, arm length, his stature favors him very well in this sport. So if he continues to understand that, use it as an advantage, build his aerobic capacity, and then also really find nuanced ways to create separation between him and the field, he can start running away with a lot of points in a lot of competitions. Colton Mertens is who we think he is, folks. He's hungry. He is grimy. He is straightforward. He holds nothing back in regards to his opinion or his thought for his other competitors. He's there to beat them. He'd love to embarrass them. He's got a chip on his shoulder always, which most athletes do that are at a high level. They're very petty in nature. And I think that Colton's a great example of that. I think that Colton's always been an underdog. I hope he continues to be an underdog. He's someone I'll root for. But by nature of what I do in regards to commentary and sometimes asked predictions, there'll be times where I got to bet against Colton because a lot of times his back is going to be to the wall, whether it's due to his physical stature or it's due to what the other athletes bring to the table. And this is one of those men who you love to see succeed because of the fact that often the deck of cards seems to be stacked against him in some kind of way. But the programming, I think, favored the shorter statured athletes as long as they could manage a couple movements this weekend. And these dudes absolutely put on a show. Roman Krennikov, being the outlier, when you talk about the statures of Colton and Austin, Roman comes in with a very different stature. And now Roman's starting to show us what he's going to be bringing to the table in 2025. As I would assume that he's still consistently just bringing himself back to the performance that we saw. So great performance there. Wonderful weekend. It was really cool to hear Rich and Angelo on the broadcast with Sean. I thought those guys did a great job of keeping it entertaining and keeping it loose. And I think a really good broadcast does that for you. There's a time to be more formal, and that's always going to be up to the event and the vibe and the flow that they want. Are you talking to the masses? Or are you talking to the CrossFit community? And there's a balance between the two. And I thought Rich and Angelo did an amazing job at keeping the crowd engaged with the stories and with the nonsense, because we're all here for that. Like, we love that. And still tying in some of the education and like the background. Here's what I like. And here's the advantage that Rich and Angelo both had is I find this, and I struggle with this, man, because I get asked to do commentary a good bit. And what is that through my years, I've only got to do it a few years at this point. There's so many secrets, right? So many secrets about the competition. Like, I legitimately find out workouts the day the athletes find out workouts. And that's not great for the show. And I say that because I don't get a chance to lean into the things that Rich could lean into. He knew where the workouts were, where they came from, why they were there, what they were an ode to, right? He got to talk about the layout, the time domains, the things that we're going to see, the ways. Man, I get like an hour to do this before some of the shows that I'm a part of, and we're asked to bring a great product to the listener. That's hard. And it's due to the lack of trust that they have for people like myself and Sean and Chase and Bill and all these other guys that you see and hear doing commentary often. They don't tell us much because people have blown it in the past, or people blow it in other ways. And we got all these leaks and all this stuff. So I like that these guys were actually a part of putting the competition on and designing the workouts, and we're still a part of the broadcast because of that. And I love that. I'm a nerd about the sport. I know many of you who either chime into my podcast or listen to what I have to say, you probably enjoy that as well. But those guys crushed it. Sean is the GOAT. And when it comes to CrossFit commentary, we all know that. We love his voice, and we're here for it. The more we hear him, the better off we all are, it seems like. So events. Okay, so check this out. From an event perspective, I thought this was laid out in an absolute disgusting way. Mr. Froning, you are completely savage for starting out with event one the way it was. 3 rounds for time, folks. 800-meter run, 20 burpee box get overs. All that's fine and dandy, right? We're used to starting competitions like that. And then all of a sudden, 40 mother freaking feed bag squats. 100 pounds for men, 70 for women. My gosh. Now, there's a really cool aspect to this and a balance of sorts in this test. Often through the first workout, we see some of the shorter statured athletes not necessarily programmed out, but it makes it harder for them because of the distance often traveled. For example, if this workout was only a couple of 800-meter runs and 20 burpee box get overs, this certainly favors the Roman Krennikovs, the taller levered athletes, the Emily Rolfs of the group, right? But because of the 40 feed bag squats, the way that you have to navigate the time for each rep, and also the amount of time in comparison to what the other movements were going to be asked of, this was a huge dictator. You could get behind someone severely on the run, be consistent on the burpees, and make up significant ground on the feed bag squats. Now, this isn't why Mr. Froning is cold-blooded and the team that put this program together because of that alone. These athletes, when you get ready to compete, folks, let me tell you something. You go through what's called a little bit of a reload deload period where you kind of back off volume and contractions. You still try to keep as much intensity as possible. But even coming off of a day of rest or light motion is lotion type movement. And then you go head to head with some of the fittest people on earth where you're running hard and then you're breathing hard through the burpees. And then you're going to have to squat fast with this light load on your back that's so disgustingly uncomfortable. It's ridiculous. Oh my gosh, the amount of delayed onset muscle soreness that these athletes have. I hope they saw this coming. I hope they knew that, like, yo, I'm just going to say, I got a choice here. I got to either pace these squats and kind of sandbag with the results of event one, or if I send it and go dark here, especially on the final round of these 40, it's going to be hard for me to stand up off the ground after this workout or get up off the toilet for the next week and a half. And I mean that because they're so fit. Lesser fit people could not take themselves to the stimulus that we saw these athletes take themselves to. So kudos to the Mayhem team for putting this together. You're absolutely disgusting. And I love it. Event number 2, Heavy Isabel. Again, this is very Rich Froning-esque, and it's not the workout in itself. It's the order and the operations of the workout. Rich really has historically made it verbal and let it be known that, one, he has wonderful success lifting moderate to heavy loads under fatigue, much more than the other competitors, right? I can akin the way Rich Froning moves, and I know hopefully all of you go back and look at YouTube videos and study his movement and watch the way he carries himself, watch the way he transitions, watch the way he methodically does singles and just eats up space on other competitors. But if you watch an athlete like Dallin Pepper in today's world, now we didn't get to see him take the floor, unfortunately, for the Mayhem Classic, but the quality of movement that he does something like a moderate heavy barbell snatch with is just ridiculous. Looks effortless every rep. And that's who had the advantage in this workout, right? Are athletes who already accumulated a ridiculous amount of fatigue. And because of their movement quality, they're still able to take the floor and execute at a very high level. Of course, we see Guy Malheiros with a 358, but it was Abby Domit with a 355 that actually dropped my jaw. Now, not that we didn't see her perform well in the West last year at the semifinals at, moderate to heavy and heavy loaded workouts, but it was just the way that she was able to execute that coming off of event one. Guy did what exactly we expected him to do. And it was amazing because, his proficiency with the barbell is amazing. He is so fast and hits such tight positions that it's not a surprise that he walked away with that event win. So at this point, we've already passed below parallel 120 times. And that was with the feedback squats. Now, of course, a lot of the workouts, or a lot of the athletes, due to the leg fatigue that they accumulated from the running and also from the squats, they had to get lower in their power receiving position sooner than they thought. We even saw Abby Domit go through a really struggle bus type experience. As she said, no, it wasn't Abby, actually. I'm recalling Hannah Black. I think that's her name. Excuse me and forgive me if I'm butchering your name, Hannah. But she went through and she was powering so many. They looked snappy, they looked easy, and all of a sudden, when she had to start catching them in a squat, probably prematurely than what she had practiced and expected because the workout one, it was disgusting. So again, what I like is the story that these workouts tell and the fitness that it tests, not just the fitness that it tests because of the workouts, but the order of the workouts. I love that kind of thought and rationale behind that. Event number 3, so to start day 2, it was only a 2-day competition, dumbbell thrusters, 27, 21, 15, 9, and legless rope climbs. Now, the legless rope climbs were an ode to a previous workout. For the men, it was 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And for the women, it was 4, 3, 2, 1. Right? Am I saying that right? 4, 3, 2, 1, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm tripping. I'm really tripping, folks. Okay. Either way, 4, 3, 2, 1, 5, 4, 3, 2. 5, 4, 3, 2. Okay, so no 1 for the men. Boy, that was rough. I apologize. So 5, 4, 3, 2 for the men, 4, 3, 2, 1 for the women. Legless rope climbs and dumbbell thrusters. Again, high level of squatty in the potty, right? We got Fisa Goffi coming in at 630 and Austin Hatfield 540. Again, due to their structure, due to their stature, due to their torso relationship to their hips when they're in the bottom of the squat. Hey, both these athletes can stay pretty vertical and upright. It's easier to do that with dumbbells than it is a barbell. So they got a lot of cash money when it comes to a breathing position in the bottom of the squat, in and out of that thing, and both proficient enough at legless rope climbs. We saw this race, like him and Colton Mertens. It was crazy the way that these dudes were racing all weekend. It was wild. Very close race. Again, very cool. A lot of squatting. Event 4, we advanced 50 GHD sit-ups, 100-foot overhead dumbbell walking lunge, 100 pounds for men, 70 for women, 100-foot handstand walk. Again, another Rich Froning special. This is like midline March all the way back to 2014. This is when he was really making his charge back to the top of the podium. It was an exciting day. It was amazing. Go back and watch that workout. Savagery. And that's when you knew it was a wrap. It was wrap at that point. But 3 rounds. This is a GHD special. We knew they were going to do at least 150 in one of these tests. We knew that. But again, we know that about Mayhem. You know that about Mayhem. Everybody that was preparing for this, folks, you guys want to bag on people who are withdrawing from this competition. They knew what to expect. And if they have something that was ailing them, even before the workouts dropped, they knew that, if my shoulders bother me, if I got a hip flexor, an abdominal, or an oblique, or something that's bothering me in any way, I already know what's about to happen to my body. If my knees are icky, if I'm having an issue getting below parallel and whatever, right? Like, you can make it through the open. I'll say for an athlete like Dallin Pepper, he dominated and did a great job throughout the open. Now, of course, he took the backseat to Colton, but very high level performance for Dallin. However, he didn't feel like stacked up to the course to be able to go punch his ticket to Mayhem Classic, likely because he knew what to expect. Whether it was a shoulder thing, whether it was a hip or a knee thing, it's like, we just know, again, from a predictor perspective, unless you've been living under a rock or you don't pay that much close attention to programming, this is what you would expect. And again, it's not that it's bad, but we knew it was going to be destructive. We knew that it was going to be a huge tax on the joints. We know that they love to test volume. And we know that they love to test volume under parallel and overhead. Again, Haley Adams killed this one, 11:48. James Sprague, 11:51. Now, Haley and James, taller statured athlete, not strong in the field, but both very fit. Again, because of the back and forth and the distance covered through the lunge, the GHD sit-up, and the 100-foot handstand walk, this is a great, great test for the taller athletes. There is no movement within this that allows the shorter statured athlete to make up ground on someone who's equally as fit when they're tall. Because on a GHD sit-up, we're all sitting on the same height of a pad, right? But if I have long arms and I can go down and touch the pad and then touch the pad where my feet are, that's a shorter range than someone that's shorter than me. It's like a thruster for the shorter person, right? So you start to see how a lot of these movements, each and every style of a movement has a preferred body type that lends itself to an advantage. And by and large, what we saw this weekend is the number of contractions that favored probably the shorter statured athlete outnumbered the other athletes. Now, we had some hinging, of course. What was the hinging? The hinging was the snatching that eventually turned into squatting anyways for most people. So again, you think about what Rich was really good at when he performed and competed. Think about it. Go back and watch the videos. Think about it. Go back and watch the videos. And now we got an erg and bar muscle ups. Again, another test that is more equally balanced. No hinging necessarily from the ground, and that's all good. This is absent of all weights. Great consideration here. 30 and 24 calories for the men and women, 30 bar muscle ups, and then another 30 and 24 calories on the Echo Bike to finish. Exciting way to finish. Absolutely devastating. The capacity that these people exhibit is amazing. You had to, send it on this. There was no doubt. Emily and Roman both finishing in third. Not surprised for them to come out and take a dub here because their backs were to the wall and they were desperate. It didn't matter how they felt at that point. You shut off your complete brain. You tell your body to shut up and you do whatever you can, reaching failure at any given point. Didn't matter. You had to do what you had to do to give yourself a chance to go to the CrossFit Games, and they did that. Now, by and large, here's what I want to finish with, team. We talked a lot. I've talked a lot. I've talked about the Mayhem Classic. I love the programming. I think it was devastating. I would have expected that. If I had athletes going there, I would have tried to make sure they were physically prepared for that. Perhaps the most durable they've ever felt because of what we could expect. Like, I think athletes that were physically prepared shined well. I think that Austin and Colton did it. I think that Abby and Fee did it. I think they were physically prepared, probably went in relatively healthy, all things considered. If you went in banged up, you probably got banged up worse. And now who knows what your recoverability is going to be like. But again, to all the coaches, to all the people in the community that say they pay attention and say they do this, you should have known what we were going to get. We all expected what we did get. Great competition, great entertainment. Now, to squat or not to squat, right? There's so much debate about this. I want to say that I made a point in a post about the lunge being a version of the squat. At no point did I ever say the lunge is a squat. Some people have posted on social media that the squat is the overhead squat, the front squat, and the back squat, the air squat. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for clarifying that. But also, when it comes to the methodology of CrossFit, we align the lunge as a form of a squat. Now, listen to me, people. Listen to me. Listen to me. Take your ears and open up. Listen up. Do you understand that a lunge is not a squat? Yeah, because I said that already, and hopefully you understand that. So I'm not confusing the two, but I'm telling you from a movement perspective. If I squat my athletes on a Monday, I'm not typically going to prioritize a lunge on a Tuesday. And that's because by function, they demand a lot of the same musculature and both a physiological and mechanical demand on the body, the knees, the hips, the quads, the hip flexors, the glutes. The function of the movement is by category going to go with the squats. I'm not talking about when I'm in my mind programming for a one-to-one client that has a nuanced or fixated goal. I'm not talking about internal rotation of the trunk and the slight difference of the unilateral contraction that's taking place versus the bilateral contraction of the squat. Because at that point, when we get into this and we talk about it with competition, here's what we would do. We would get so detailed that we'd say, well, it's unfair that they're overhead squatting because these longer arm athletes have more play overhead. And well, they have a chance to keep it over their center of the mass a little bit easier if someone has a shorter arm length. Or you know what, for me, my whole life, if I would have been in the CrossFit space and we'd have tested back squat for every time we tested front squat, I'd have won all those events. Right? So there's differences, and even within the squat family of the stimulus and the outcome and all these things. Is squatting important? Absolutely. Is squatting the cornerstone of good fitness training? Absolutely. If you don't squat, you're functioning at a fraction of your athletic capacity. However, this is where y'all going to disagree with me. There's a time where there's a time where things must be considered that's way up here, and everyone else needs to be way down here. So way up here, you got to make decisions and think about the future and think about what you see from a landslide or landscape perspective. Our sport is often over squatted. Mayhem Classic, probably over squatted. I don't have a huge problem with that. Again, it's Rich Froning and Mayhem. What would you expect? Do you remember there was a year in 2017 where Dave took away the barbell? We only had dumbbells. People lost their mind. Do you think that influenced the way that everyone trained for years to come? It did. What if one year at the semifinal level, there's no squatting? Do you think maybe that people who actually teach CrossFit, the methodology, look at what gyms are doing, look at what competitors are doing, hear about stories, what joints are most overused, what is the most pain that you experience? We're talking about the age group online qualifiers, people. Do you think they need to pass below parallel 150 times and we need to test that both in the open and there's a lot of debate. I would have liked to see some type of squat, but here I am giving you my honest opinion saying I would have liked to see some type of squat, and equally I can see the value in not squatting because the lunge is there. And they squatted in the open. And I mean, how often do we need to just do this same type of thing in below parallel and make it so predictable? There's something always for us to complain about. Hey, we want more unpredictability. We want, whatever. And then we want to train for the untrainable. And then they give us something, a test that doesn't look like exactly the cookie cutter model that we've had in the past. And all you do is complain. Oh, that's just trash. We didn't get to squat. Okay, cool. It's a fitness test, right? So throughout the scope, if you're fit enough at the right time, the right thing is going to get tested. Does it have to get tested the same way at every phase? I don't know. I would have liked to see some kind of squat. So I'm with you there. But equally, I can see that if we don't squat, what if we don't squat in the online semifinals? What if that's true? What if we lunge? What if we lunge instead and do step-ups like we did, whatever? I hope not. That could be a nightmare again, judging-wise. So again, you're hearing my opinion. I'm always going to give you the honest one. But team, just think about this. Think about the way the absence of a squat would influence. Some of these young competitors growing up that are back squatting like 3 days a week or squatting in some form 3 days a week because, well, that's what's tested. I have to be prepared for a test like Mayhem. If Mayhem is the golden scope or the golden cue, right? Think about this test that they just ran. And then you got youthful competitors coming up. You got age group athletes looking at that competition. They're like, my goodness, I have got to be prepared for 300 loaded contractions below parallel in 2 days. I've got to be prepared for that. So what's their training have to look like? And then what's the cost? What's the quad tendon going to do? What's the patella tendon going to do? How do we keep that healthy? How much time do they have to train? Can they recover from that? Does that bias their training then to hinging and squatting? Like there's an influence that I believe that we could have on the sport when we kind of start to shift things. As painstaking as it might be, folks, like, there's not a squat in the age group online qualifier. Holy moly, I can't believe that. Now let it frame the way you train. Maybe you do more unilateral preparation. Maybe you do more work on hinging and preparing yourself for, you know what if there's only one test? Well, what kind of squats do I need to be prepared for that one test? Instead of, well, I know I'm going to need to do 150 wall balls in one workout, and then I'm going to have to do 130 squat cleans in another workout, right? Like a lot of times that's historically what we've had to be prepared for. At least in my time of competing from about 2011 all the way through 2017 and 18, where that was like a really big focus for me, man, I felt like that's how I had to train. And I felt like I was a byproduct of what I saw at the highest level from a testing perspective. So my ode to the community is to consider, is this a righting of the ship to a degree? Is there a reason that this is here? Is it because it's the age group online qualifier and we're considering the longevity and the persistence of our masters athletes? And we want to kind of harness that. Like, do they need to squat? Absolutely. But do they need to lunge? Yeah. Do they need to step up? Yes. And through their years, should we continue to test a full range of motion squat and demand that they have it? 100%. I hope we never crown someone the fittest that at some point doesn't have to exhibit that. But if it's not at the right time and you're upset because it didn't happen at semifinals, well, I'm sorry. Be fitter in other capacities. The same way that some of my clients or myself throughout the years have been tested with strict handstand pushups in the open, and maybe that's something that holds them back, and it's the one thing. And you're like, do you really need to be able to press upside down strict at the open level to go play with the semifinals, and it's not even retested again throughout the whole thing? Like those, there's so many things that we could, legless rope climbs, right? Legless rope climbs in the quarterfinal level, like whatever it was, there could be things that we dive into and discuss and poke holes in and all the thing. I want you to be mindful. I will always give you my opinion as a coach and as a global consideration for like why things happen the way they do. I don't have a lot of time to complain about things. If I had a client at Mayhem Classic, I don't even care about how many squats there are. I'm going to tell my client we need to be better and be prepared for those amount of squats to dominate the field because that's my job. If I'm an athlete and I'm a competitor, if I'm a part of the community and there's no squats in the semifinal, and I did the semifinal, I didn't even get to do the age group semifinal. I got hurt 5 weeks before the open. I didn't get to do all the open workouts this year. And I really wanted to. My point is that I'd have been pumped with no squats first and foremost, although I have a great squat and I like squatting and it's a way that I create separation between myself and other people. But I'd have been like, yo, it's kind of tight. Like this is a curveball I never saw coming. So how does that influence, though, the preparation, the way we train, the way we take care of ourselves, and the perspective at which we give competitors? Again, as a coach for me, I get no time to complain about the test because I got to get people ready. And I also got to get myself ready. I don't have a say in what comes down the ladder. I think a lot of people are confused and think that they have influence on that. And I hope that they don't. I hope that they don't. I hope no one listens to the community when it comes to programming. I hope that we have people running this show so strongly feeling about the test that they prescribe, about how to find the fittest, when to find the fittest, how the movements are going to come out, where they come out. I hope and pray, I kid you not, that whoever's overseeing this is so forthright in their approach and they get such advice that they're glued to their approach and they don't hear nothing except a bunch of complaining that won't influence their decisions nonetheless. Now, is that true? I'm not sure. And unfortunately, I don't know that that's true, but I think that's the kind of leadership that we deserve. But nonetheless, yeah, that's the Mayhem Classic. To squat or not to squat, that is the question. We all have our own opinion, and I think it's a healthy conversation to keep going. My advice to everybody is complain less, adapt more, and make your training more well-rounded. You know where you can find some 7 days free training. Come on in, train to rise up. Right now, we're getting ready. A lot of our competitor tracks are going to get athletes ready for the online qualifier, whether you're participating or not, because it's that time of year to peak your fitness and understand where you really are going into the off season. And that's a great opportunity to do that. So hop in, go to ttrufitness.com. And of course, you can find 7 days free by scanning this QR code if you're watching it on YouTube. As usual, folks, chime in with your questions and your comments below if you're watching this on YouTube, and give me some topics to address in the future. I'd love to dive in and help you with any specific needs or anything that you have questions about, whether it's from coaching, cueing, seeing movement, teaching movement on the coaching side, or even if it has to do with movement training, weakness development, or all in all mindset or nutrition training. I like to talk about it all. Have fun, folks. Live life. This is an exciting time of year for CrossFit. I mean, who's going to buy this thing anyways? Gosh, I don't even want to get into that. Keep rising.